Alright everybody, welcome back. So I wanted to start out and let you know this is not going to be your typical War Thunder YouTube video. So I usually try and use some decent footage in the background. Maybe not the absolute best, but enough that you won't get bored watching it, right? You're not going to sit there and, just watch me flying around doing nothing the entire game. Well, the first part of this video is going to be exactly that, because I figured it was the only fair way to show you exactly how it feels playing this plane right now. So this is the Kurnass 2000, and Gaijin went ahead and moved it up to 12.3 in the recent VR changes, and as the thumbnail suggests, that is the same battle rating as the F-14. Meanwhile, it has lost some of the things that made the Phantom so effective at what it does. Let me elaborate. The Phantom has never been the most agile aircraft in War Thunder, and especially not up at the battle rating that's at right here, up at 12.3. What the Phantom was originally intended to be with the US Navy was a missile-armed interceptor. And of course, it does have the Agile Eagle slots in the case of the US Air Force versions like what I'm using right here, which does help it a little bit, but it is still not going to be the most effective dogfighting platform, and so it relies on its missiles, and in particular, its radar missiles. Now, the Israelis stripped it out of the Kurnass 2000 because by this stage, it was the late 80s, early 90s, they had the F-15. The Phantom was thoroughly relegated at this point to the sidelines, and so it wasn't a concern. They were using it almost exclusively at this point for, close air support, for ground strike. And so these Pythons on it were purely for self-defense. Now, in War Thunder, in Era B at least, that is not your major concern. Your major concern is killing as many planes as quickly as possible. And the K2K is kind of incapable of doing that now. I mean, you've seen pretty much everyone that I'm looking at is dying to radar missiles because we are back in a radar missile meta. Gaijin went ahead and moved the multipath height down to 60 meters, and that means it is incredibly difficult to actually avoid radar missiles in many cases, especially on maps like this where there's a lot of terrain. Actually being able to get kills in this aircraft relies on being able to get to the merge. In a lot of games, you will not be able to do so because everyone you look at is going to die to somebody else's radar missile before you're actually able to get there. Or whenever you pull them into a dogfight, someone else is going to slam them with a radar missile as you're doing that. This is a perfect example right here. I'm moving to try and engage this F-4J UK, which is one of the few planes I can actually beat in a dogfight in this lobby, and he gets slammed by a radar missile while he's engaging me, and then a second radar missile as well. Here's another case. I'm being actively engaged, actively shot at by these people. And sure, I could fire a Python in the head-on, but they would just get flared at that point. At your own battle rating, you have the F-4E Kai, which sure, it does get a little bit worse IR missiles against the AIM-9Ls instead of the Python. It doesn't get as many flares, and it doesn't have the Agile Eagle, but in exchange you get 4 AIM-7Fs, and that is a much, much more viable loadout for ARB now. The F-14 is the same battle rating as this, and it has better flight performance, as well as an absolutely outstanding kit of 6 radar missiles. Whether you use the AIM-7F or the Phoenix, either way, they definitely outperform this thing. At 12.7, you have the MiG-29 with the R-27ER, and at 13.0, you get a whole suite of vehicles, such as the Gripen, the F-15, the Mirage 4000, and the list goes on. The other 12.3s will still struggle with them, but at least, hey, they can actually frontally engage them at reasonable distances, and they have somewhat of a chance of actually being able to kill them. What's a plan that the Kurnass 2000 going to do, which relies on getting to the merge when it has to merge with a Gripen and a Phantom? If you ask me, this thing could totally go to 12.0, and there'd be no issues whatsoever. So I'm going to stop complaining for a second and move towards more of the objective stuff about the plane, how the Pythons are, everything else, what upgrades you get. Before I move on to the more objective stuff about the aircraft, I would just like to ask, if you haven't already, please go ahead and like the video, help me boost the algorithm, and if you haven't subscribed already, I'd greatly appreciate it. Going back to those Python 3s that I mentioned earlier, they are good IR missiles, especially for this battle rating. Now, that may not be the best missiles that you'll find at this battle rating, considering that you will actually find the R-73 and the Magic II at the same VR, but I mean, they are basically just better AIM-9Ls. So if you haven't seen it before, they have the exact same flare resistance as the AIM-9L, so you're not going to have any, super insane shots like you will with something like the R-73 or the Magic II, for example, but it does accelerate noticeably faster. Take a look at the motor. The Python gets both a booster and a sustainer, and its total thrust is substantially higher than the AIM-9L, which is why it accelerates so much quicker. What this does, at least in terms of flare resistance, is it makes the missile get closer quicker, and the closer to the target it is, the less flares the missile can see. This is why you hear so many people saying that the Magic 2 is better flares than the R73, even though they both have the same, gate width as the Seeker head. It's simply the fact that the Magic accelerates so much quicker. It's also technically a 40G missile, although, with how fast it's going, that makes its turning circle rather wide, especially at the very beginning. All around a good IR missile, just not as suited for the meta as it once was. You'll see me in the background, I am actually using one of the other advantages of the Kurnass 2000, and that is its extra flare pods. As you can see, the rear Sparrow bays now get flare pods, and yes, they are only flares, you can no longer bring chaff in here as well. And this does help you out substantially, especially in situations like this where you have multiple enemies attacking you. Although unfortunately, with both a Mirage 2000 and a MiG-29 on a poor old F4 Phantom, there isn't much that the Phantom's going to be doing in that case. I mentioned earlier that the Kurnass 2000 was intended for air-to-ground, and yeah, it handles that very well on War Thunder. So the most important weapons, if you ask me at least, are these AGM-65Ds. These are what actually give you some standoff range against AAs and the like. And when you combine them with your pod, you can actually get some nice long-range shots out of these, especially if you're launching from up high and from high speed. The biggest problem with the pod, though, is the fact that it doesn't actually have thermal, so you're going to have to use your own Mark 1 eyeball to spot the enemy. You can also bring laser-guided bombs as well, though I've had much better luck when it comes to the fire and forget capability of the Mavericks, and unfortunately you aren't actually able to mix and match Mavericks and laser-guided bombs. Because if you were, I would totally bring a couple laser-guided bombs on the outer pylons that aren't being used by the Mavericks. Apparently it may have been like a computer issue or something where they weren't allowed to use it. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but that's just the way it is in War Thunder. And I haven't found any kind of source on whether or not that is actually historically accurate. Either way you decide to go for it, either the Mavericks or the laser-guided bombs, it is definitely good cast for its battle rating and a bit of an upgrade over the earlier F4E, though with the lineup that you get at 11.0, at least in the US tree, I would definitely rather take the normal F4E. To sum things up short and sweet, as of time of the recording, if you're just playing a ground RB, yes, I would recommend it then. But for air, no, I can't say I'd recommend the Kurnass 2000. It's just kind of not in a good spot right now at all. The multipath change really neutered it. And in any case, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comments down below maybe what you'd like to see next. I think I'll take some suggestions this time. And I'll catch y'all next time. So, peace, y'all.